Hi everyone, welcome to a quick little video in AutoCAD on explaining ModelSpace and Paperspace and how you set up a viewport and how you print possibly a PDF to scale. So what you're looking at right now is just a quick little exercise from one of my classes, and I'm in the midst of drawing, and we externally referenced this image and I scaled it. And I'm kind of referencing it, using it as a helpful tool. So that's what you're looking at in ModelSpace. We draw most of the time in ModelSpace in AutoCAD, and we're drawing full scale. So what does that mean? That means, truly if there's a door opening and it is a 3-foot wide opening, we are truly drawing that to scale at 3 feet, so 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, so if I scale back, move over. Biggest thing at the very, very bottom of your interface, how you know you're in ModelSpace is because at the very, very south end where my cursor is right now, you will have a button and it will say model on it. If I go ahead and select it by snapping on the left side of my mouse, I will go into what is called Paperspace. And you know you're in Paperspace because you generically have this graphic interpretation of a piece of paper. One that you cannot snap to, just so you know and you're aware. By default, it's usually set up to a letter size default sheet. And right now, you guys can see I have a little flashing going on, but you can see that if I select what is actually a viewport, it is actually on an incorrect layer. It is actually my current layer. And when you work like that, going into Paperspace, it'll automatically create that viewport and automatically put it on most likely your current layer as well. Super easy to do. Sometimes I work with these. Most of the time I work with the viewports that are already automatically created, and I'll just change this layer to def points. And why you always want your viewports in Paperspace to be on the def points layer, you probably already know this, it's because it's a non-printing layer automatically, and it's there for us. It's convenient for us. I've shared in past videos, but also in class that I'll write notes to teammates in def points, just so like there's something I'm in the midst of or in the middle of and I haven't completed it, but if you go into this drawing, just know like I'm getting there. I just need till tomorrow or something. So it's a great layer. We use it quite a bit. So I'm going to start from the bare bone basic though. I'm going to delete this viewport. I'm going to change my current layer to def points, and I'm going to work with either this letter size sheet of paper, or I'm going to change it to 11 by 17. And how do I do that? If you just right click in the lower left hand corner of the interface, if you right click on the tab that says layout 1, because that again is default, and if you just go to page setup manager, this is where you can set up under this layout 1. You can hit this button here, modify. This is where it'll look like the print window. Right here, I can go ahead and select DWG to PDF. Unless you have, of course, Acrobat full version loaded, of course, you'll have Acrobat PDF as an option. Or if you work in Bluebeam, you will have a Bluebeam option. I do not have Bluebeam on this machine, but I'm going to just select the DWG to PDF and just assume we don't have anything installed. This is where you change your size of paper. So again, by default, it's letter size, but very easily you can change this to 11 by 17. In fact, I'll leave it there for now. And some things in this window are an option and other things are not. So you're seeing in the upper right hand corner, I'm actually missing my CTB file. And that's okay for this little example. And then I'm set to a drawing orientation of landscape, which I like. I don't need to preview it because I don't really have anything to preview yet, and I'm just going to hit OK here. And you can close this window, this page setup manager, once you have basically agreed with what you have selected. And you could see, or if you kind of can think back, it looks a little bit bigger. And I'm just letting you know it is a little bit bigger because it's an 11 by 17 sheet of paper. That took me the longest to get used to in AutoCAD and Paperspace. However, if I want to move forward and I want to create a viewport, the command to create a viewport is truly just typing viewports and hitting enter, and you'll get this pop-up window. And most of the time, again, if I'm just doing a simple print from ModelSpace at a specific scale, it's usually a single viewport, but you also have these great ones where in one single creation of a viewport, you can have 3 separate views, which is really great and dynamic, especially if you start to get into, the plan view, the elevation view, and if you built anything in 3D, which most likely if you're in AutoCAD, you are not today, but literally single is where I'm going to stay. And I'm just going to OK here. And again, I'm on the def points layer. And again, you can't unfortunately snap to endpoints or corners or intersections on these graphical interpretations of pieces of paper, even though my object snaps are on, all good. So literally, I usually will just create my viewport within boundaries, like voila. And you're seeing a couple things. I showed you off on the left-hand side in ModelSpace. Actually, I'll take you there again. If I go into ModelSpace, on the left-hand side of my drawing is this external reference. On the right-hand side is my CAD drawing. My AutoCAD is kind of stuttering because of this external reference, so I'm just going to type XREF here, and I'm just going to detach it, and I can undo all of this, so no big deal at all. It'll save me a little bit of skipping. Wonderful. And if I go back to, and again, I'm in ModelSpace here. Again, how do you know you're in ModelSpace? Usually your viewport, unless you changed it and customize it, the background color is always going to be black. If you go back and hit that button model, and it'll change to paper, and I don't know if I pointed that out. It'll shift a little bit to the left or the right, but now when you're in Paperspace, you have an icon or a button at the bottom that says Paperspace. And you can see that that external reference is disappeared. I do have a grid on in my viewport. No big deal. I can turn that off. And of course, my floor plan is all the way to the right, so I want to edit all of that. So what do I do to edit that? You just want to, while you're in Paperspace, get into the viewport, which basically means you want to edit ModelSpace. You can do that 2 ways. You can double click, literally, which is most of the time what I do. You either double click inside the viewport in Paperspace, and you can see at the very bottom of your screen, it'll say model again. And you get kind of this bolded outline, if you will. Wonderful. If I want to get out, you just double click out. Or you can just select basically your viewport, and I think you could right click and get into it. But I'm going to do the double clicking to save a little bit of time because I just think it's faster. And so immediately, again, when I'm here back in ModelSpace, I am going to turn off this display drawing grid. It's kind of hard to see. It's very dense. And I'm just going to pan my floor plan over. And again, it's not perfectly centered, but it's more centered than it wasn't, right? And I'm going to get out of ModelSpace. And again, I can double click here, or I can just select the button at the very bottom that says model, and I'm back to Paperspace, and there's my Paperspace button. So one thing I want to double check before I actually create this PDF is I do want to select the viewport. And I apologize, my computer is still jumping, so obviously the XREF was not the issue. I just selected the viewport, and it's highlighted in blue. I definitely can see at the very, very bottom of my screen, a little bit further to the right, that I'm at a scale that doesn't even make sense, right? Well, I do actually want to make this floor plan print at 1/8 inch scale. So immediately I'm going to make sure that that viewport is set to 1/8 inch scale, like voila. And what you can do when you create viewports, and you have to be careful because not only are you setting up the scale, you're also setting up what you see in that viewport that it's perfect. But if it's all good, you have a little button at the very, very bottom of your screen that is it's a lock. And if you select it, you have now just locked the viewport. And that means that I can't accidentally change it. I can't accidentally edit it. If I double click into ModelSpace, well, I should say, if I double click into ModelSpace, it won't let me zoom in and zoom out, which basically would change the scale, and it's because it's locked. But if I, again, double click out of ModelSpace, I'm into Paperspace. How I know I'm in Paperspace is because it says it at the bottom. If I select that viewport again, if I deselect the lock, then literally if I get back in and I zoom, I can change the scale accidentally of my file, if you will. So again, Control Z is always undo. Again, that's a very easy fix by just undoing. And I truly am going to lock my viewport because it's beneficial. And then as far as creating a PDF, again, we either print or plot in AutoCAD. It's a long old program, so the options are there. You're going to see, obviously, it's set to DWG to PDF because I set that with the Page Setup Manager. It understands that I have an 11 by 17 sheet. And then what I like to do here is I always select window. Again, I can't snap on the fake piece of paper, but I can select and snap on my viewport. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select point to point. I am going to always center my PDF because if you don't center it, it just looks wonky and not professional. It is not fit to paper. When you're working with Paperspace, which we are, and we've set the viewport up to a specific scale, the scale that you will actually create the PDF is actually a 1-to-1 ratio. Beautiful. And then in the upper right-hand corner, hopefully you have a CTB file that is loaded and not missing. I don't know why mine's missing, but it is. And again, I would fix that probably before I actually create this PDF, but for this little video's sake, I'll use it. Everything else, shaded viewport options as displayed, normal, beautiful. Plot options, by default, your plot object line weights, plot styles, and Paperspace last are all checked on, and I leave it. And then drawing orientation, most of the time, you know, again, we're here in Chicago, most buildings are rectilinear, so landscape works the best, but, you know, sometimes we change it up. And here is where I will preview it. You can see that my CTB file is missing because I have a floor plan that is tricolor because it's the pen assignments to my layers, and that shouldn't be the case. It should be black and white. So you know what, let's just be a little fair so that this makes sense more. I'm gonna either pick grayscale or monotone. I think I'm gonna pick grayscale. I think grayscale allows you to at least still see pen width, pen thickness. Monochrome does not, but let's take a look. And again, not that I'm not using this for a client presentation. Of course, this would be something in-house that I would need. But yeah, that looks good. At least it's black and white. You can see I'm not complete. I know that it's an eighth inch scale. When I print it, I can lay trace on it. I can draw. And again, you just want to right click to plot or just select the plot or printer icon in the upper left-hand corner, whichever is easier. And then save it wherever you need, if you will. And I'm just going to go to a project file folder, and I'm just going to place it here. Beautiful. And then literally it should automatically open, all depending on the settings of your computer. Wonderful. And that pretty much is it, you guys. So again, the button at the bottom of your interface is probably the most important, right? And again, when you're in Paperspace, you can't get into the main model space of drawing other than through your viewport. So again, in this case where I didn't want to be in Paperspace, I literally want to be ModelSpace, you would select those bottom left-hand tabs and highlight and select the model. Get back to drawing whenever you want to print. So also one last thing to add, when you do set up a viewport, when you set up a sheet, so I have an 11 by 17 sheet with a viewport, make sure you rename the layout one. So right now this is 11 by 17, and you know, this can be space plan. So sometimes I'll just do SP, literally for space plan, construction. You know, again, it could be just construction. So, you know, whatever makes sense, but try to always communicate, not just for yourself. These are drawings in AutoCAD that you might be sharing with the team. Maybe not in school, you're not, but in the future you will. So hopefully that's helpful. So very much like I just said, hopefully you found this video helpful. Let me know if you have any comments. Most of you guys know where to reach me, and thank you very much. Hopefully this was short and sweet. Thanks. Bye.